Welcome to Think About It with your host, Jaden Miller.
All right. Good afternoon, and thank you guys for joining me on Think About It with Jaden Miller. Please like, share, and subscribe on my YouTube channel, and like, comment, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. You can find me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, Castbox, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and more. So whichever is your favorite, please join me and listen to my show. So I've taken a little break here and there lately, but I was a little busy, had some other things going on, and so, but I'm back. I didn't want you guys to drop off and feel that, hey, Jaden Miller has just abandoned his podcast. I have not. I am still here. Thank you again for joining me. So the last time I did a podcast, it wasn't my own. I actually joined the show of The Man Space with Russ and Les. And if you have not heard that podcast, you need to check it out. All right. It is the Man Space podcast. Again, you can find them on all of your favorite podcast platforms. We had a really, really good show. Talked about a lot of different things, mainly talked about my background, and we laughed a lot. And so, Russ and Les, I just want to thank you guys for inviting me onto your show. I certainly look to do the same for you all. And gosh, what a great time that was. And so just wanted to thank them again. But as I said earlier, I am back, just handling some of the everyday things that go on in life. So, marriage and children and work and extracurricular activities and all of those different things. So, not long ago, I decided to take my podcast in a little different direction. And so I mainly focus on educational things. Hey, and things related to government, because that's where, my background is. That's what I really, really like to talk about. And that way it keeps me on target. I may still talk a little bit about modern day things or, today, or issues going on today. What primarily I'll do is I'll talk about, something educational. Like, for example, today we're going to talk about the Declaration of Independence. I put my spin on it, and a lot of times what I'll do is I'll try to make the connections to what's going on in your life or what's going on today in the world or in the United States of America, just so that your understanding of it will be enhanced. And so, again, I appreciate you guys joining me on this podcast. Today, I'm going to talk about the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence. Now, just from the very beginning, most of us know that the United States of America was born on July 4th, 1776. That's when we had all of those individuals from Congress that signed stating that they were separating themselves from Great Britain. All right. And Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. And it was a document simply laying out that this was now going to be a new nation, free from its motherland, Great Britain. All right. Well, as you can imagine, on the other side of the ocean, Atlantic Ocean, Great Britain didn't take too well to this, and especially King George III. He was really incensed that these colonists, these individuals beneath him, all right, would attempt to separate themselves from the mightiest, at the time, the mightiest nation in the world. All right. So I'm going to just talk to you a little bit about how the Declaration of Independence came to being and its impact on the the United States, and its impact on how the world changed for Great Britain, how it changed for France, but how it changed and made these now new United States a powerful nation of its own in the world. All right. So, as you all know, Great Britain was not treating the colonists very, very well. There are a number of reasons why we can argue Great Britain or the United States decided to separate from Great Britain. Here, I'll give you a couple of them. Great Britain always considered the 13 colonies, which is what they were called before they became the United States. Remember, the United States, or the 13 original colonies is which was what they were originally called, belonged to Great Britain. It was a colony of Great Britain, and Great Britain executed rule over the 13 original colonies. But Great Britain always considered the 13 colonies as a source of wealth and money, but not a unanimous part of their country. And as much as possible, they always focused on enriching the mainland, Great Britain, by exploiting the 13 colonies. Take this into consideration also. Number 2, the British government and King George III never considered colonists as their own citizens. They never provided them all those rights and privileges of English citizens. So, for example, the British authority violated the Bill of Rights, meaning the English Bill of Rights of 1689, quite often. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. And then at various times, the English Parliament imposed these harsh laws on the colonists, okay? Whether it be the Stamp Act or the Townshend Acts, all in a way, in a manner in which to raise funds for Great Britain, because Great Britain liked to go off and fight these wars, and they like to go off on these military jaunts so that they could, take over the world. And so the colonists were seen as less than. All right. But they still depended on the 13 original colonies because it was rich with various natural resources, including the land mass itself, which was compatible for producing different cash crops, okay? Wheat, barley, hay, rice, wheat. And then also it had, a lot of gold and silver and diamonds and all of those different things. All right. So it was a very, very wealthy part of their now kingdom. All right. So that's part of it. It's all of that wealth. OK. And as I've already mentioned, the British government and the king never considered the American colonists as their own citizens. And that one always confounded me, because where did they come from? They came from Great Britain, all right? And so in 1689, and then if we even go back in time, if we go back to the Magna Carta, if we go back to the English Petition of Right, I believe that was in 1628, there had been these rights established for the people of England because the rulers or the kings, the authoritarian figure, the authoritarians, they mistreated the people. And so the people would rise up and say there needs to be a set of rights for the people. And the English Bill of Rights of 1689 really established that. And as I mentioned, the Magna Carta started it off. We can talk about the Magna Carta another time. And then the English Petition of Right of 1628, instituted certain ways that the government had to operate with the king and that kind of thing. All right. But the English Bill of Rights of 1689 was, brought into being as a way to ensure that there were certain rights and liberties that were to be given to the people. It was this English Bill of Rights of 1689. It was also called the Glorious Revolution, a bloodless revolution, but what they wanted to make sure was that, for example, it is the right of the subjects to petition the king. So people could speak their mind, and not have to worry about being prosecuted. Okay. That freedom of speech and debates in Parliament ought not be impeached or questioned in any court. Okay. And that excessive bail, ought not be required, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. All right. That jurors in trials for high treason ought to be freeholders, and promises of fines and forfeitures before conviction were illegal. There's just so many things. All right. That the English Bill of Rights of 1689 instituted for the people. But these rights were not given to the people that resided within the 13 original colonies. All right. So again, these are citizens, or they're subjects of the King George III. All right. There's a Parliament of England that is supposed to take care and protect the rights of all of its citizens, including the ones in the 13 original colonies. All right. But it didn't do so. It did not do so. So some argue that, the British government and king never considered the American colonists as their own English citizens. But many of these people were born in England. All right. So, of course, many of them were born within the 13 original colonies. But still, this land was a colony. It was still part of the English or the British Empire. All right. But they were mistreated. And they were continuously mistreated to the point where they said enough is enough. So I like to make this comparison of the Declaration of Independence is a written document written by Thomas Jefferson, but the separation, the breaking up of Great Britain and the now new United States of America, effective July 4th, 1776. So I always think of it as like, you can't really say that it's like a boyfriend, a girlfriend, or a marriage, because the British Empire had control over the colonies. Okay. So, it's not like husband and wife. It's more like parent-child, in a sense. Okay. But the parent is over the top and extremely abusive. Okay. And so it is a seeking of an emancipation from Great Britain. Okay. It's like a son telling its daddy, I'm gone. I'm out of here because you are too abusive. Okay. I mean, and I put the word "too" in front of it, which doesn't need a qualifier. The fact of the matter is you are abusive. Okay. Abusive in a way that a parent should never teach or treat its children. Okay. And so, after all of the ugliness, all of the grievances, okay, all of the things that were done to the colonists, they decided it's time to go. It's that son telling dad, it's time to go. All right. Well, before it's time to go, we need to write a letter. All right. And we need to write a letter to someone, okay, because if we want to separate from Great Britain, we need to understand that Great Britain is not just going to let us go. All right. So it's the same thing with daddy and son. OK, you can tell daddy you're leaving. But what if daddy does not want to let you go? What are you going to do? Daddy is bigger than you. Daddy is better than you. Daddy has a whole lot more of wealth and resources at his disposal than you do. Okay. Daddy is dressed up very, very well. You're wearing rags, barely wearing shoes. All right. You're not doing very well. Okay. But you know that it's time to go. All right. Because of all of the abuses and the grievances, all of the ugly things that have been done to you. All right. So now, in order to go, you need some help. All right. You can't just walk out of the house. All right. You need some help from somebody that is almost, if not as strong as daddy. All right. But you don't know who that's going to be. You have a hope, but you don't know. So in order to bolster your argument, you write a letter. All right. I'm going to go back to the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to the world to let the world know what King George III and Parliament were doing to the colonists. All right. That's what the Declaration of Independence is about. OK, it's declaring a separation. We must separate from one another because one of us going to go crazy. OK, one of us going to knock the other out. OK, and it's probably going to be more so like the United States of America, because, Daddy, you've been Daddy, you big and bad, but I can slap you. OK, I can slap you. I don't want to. I never wanted to be in this position in the first place. You put me in this position where now I'm seen as this errant child, this troublemaker going up against my daddy. No, it is the other way around. OK, see, Dad, you weren't loving. You weren't a provider. OK, you weren't an advisor. OK, what you did was you took everything that I had. OK, you put these unnecessary rules on me. OK, going back to the Declaration of Independence and the 13 original colonies, you taxed me heavily. OK, all right, all because you wanted more money, because you were now floundering after going to war with France. All right. So what I need to do is I need to let the world know, all right, how you've been treating me. So Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence not just to declare independence from Great Britain. He sent a copy of the Declaration of Independence to the king, but he sent it to the world. He wrote it to the world so that the world would know exactly what had been done. He laid out all of the abuses and all of their grievances against Daddy. He did so, and did so very eloquently. All right? Very eloquently. All right. So before I really get into some of these grievances, let me remind you that I want you to like, share, and subscribe on my YouTube channel, and like, comment, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. So if you like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, Cashbox, any of those guys, I just want you to listen. I think I have a wealth of things that I can share with you. So if you have friends or family and they just need somebody to listen to on the drive home, or while they're at work, or while they're at home, tell them to join in with me, Jaden Miller, with Think About It with Jaden Miller. All right. So getting back to it, I want you to think about it. Think about this, all right? Well, so Thomas Jefferson is writing this letter, this Declaration of Independence. Well, where does he get the words from? And, who influenced him, all right, to write the Declaration of Independence? But more importantly, the words, okay? Because remember, this document is going to the entire world, all right? And what they're doing is they're putting a King George III on Front Street. Okay, they putting him on full blast. All right, so embarrassing. All right, well, Thomas Jefferson was influenced by a man named John Locke. All right. So John Locke had ideas about life and freedom and government and property ownership. And they were major influences on Thomas Jefferson's writings, especially the Declaration of Independence. So in the Declaration of Independence, you see these words, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Well, Thomas Jefferson borrowed almost in entirety from earlier writings by Locke, who wrote a lot of treaties, a lot of books, a lot of documents about government. So Thomas Jefferson regarded John Locke as one of the most important philosophers in regard to the subject of liberty. All right. So John Locke believed that government is a necessary element of society in which everyone benefits, and that people willingly sacrifice some personal liberties in order to be part of that society. In other words, we have the right to life, liberty. Thomas Jefferson said we had the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. But John Locke believed that we had the right to life, liberty, and property. And I'll talk about that in just a second. All right. But what he's saying is that we give up some of our personal liberties in order to be a part of a society that benefits everyone. For example, all right. So, if our God-given rights, or our personal rights and liberties, we can be selfish. All right. Many of us are, selfish. All right. We can, walk into a store and steal something, okay, or take something that doesn't belong to us. Okay. We don't have a right to do that, but what John Locke is saying that we give up certain personal liberties. Okay. So, for example, again, maybe, there's regulations on, where we can go and at what time. Okay. And the reason for that is because we want our society to be protected, from those that have no will to follow any set of laws. All right. So here, back in the olden days, someone could be shot and killed just for being on someone's property. All right. Well, and the person is not attempting a crime or anything like that. Let's just say that they're lost and they were walking up the road to the road to the house, and the owner just shot him, because the person, he didn't know who he was. Well, we give up certain rights so that stuff like that doesn't happen. Okay, so we have a police department that can investigate. We have authorities and we have rules and laws to protect people that just so happen to be walking on someone's property simply because they're lost and they're looking for help. All right. So we give up certain rights so that we can live in a society of laws and rules. Okay. John Locke believed that people had certain inalienable rights and that governments do not have the right to ask members of the society over which it rules to sacrifice those rights as a condition. And those inalienable rights are life, liberty, and property. John Locke believed that in having the right to own property, people could pave their own path to happiness. All right. So those three things, according to John Locke, are so important. The right to life, liberty, and property. In other words, no one should be able to just take your life. The government should not be able to arbitrarily take your life. That was happening under Great Britain towards the 13 original colonies. No one should be able to take away your liberty without due process. And the English government, Great Britain, under King George III, was doing such, taking people, arresting them. They were not convicted, but yet put in dungeons, put in cells, seizing their property. Okay. And again, John Locke said these are inalienable rights, meaning they cannot be taken away. God has given you these rights. Okay. But this was not happening in the 13 original colonies. All right. So much torture, so much ugliness, so much evil perpetrated against the colonies. Remember, these are their very own people who they are targeting, who they are doing these ugly things to. So, in writing his letter to the world, but more specifically to King George III, Thomas Jefferson says, when people decide as a group to separate from one political process to create a new one, especially when their rights are violated, it is their duty to fully explain why they are separating. All right. Now, that could be considered the preamble of the Declaration of Independence. All right. See, Thomas Jefferson uses really, eloquent words and poetic words. He says, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. All right. So I'm just putting it to you in modern language. All right. So that's what he's saying. He's saying that, you know what, when we can't agree, when there is one political process that is dominant and overbearing over another one, it is time to create a new one. It's just that simple. We have got to separate because our rights are being violated. All right. So he goes on in this letter, which he says, I'm fully explaining why we are separating. He says that we believe that all people are equal to each other and are granted certain rights by their creator. And Thomas Jefferson says life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness that no government should take away. But see, Great Britain is taking away these rights from their own English citizens. All right. Thomas Jefferson says in his eloquent language, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All right. Thomas Jefferson, in explaining why they are separating, is going to talk about this new theory of government, this social contract and the rights of man. Okay. He goes on to say, and I'm just going to tell you in today's speak, he says, governments are created by people and receive their powers from the people. When a government abuses the rights of the people have the right to change or overthrow the government and create something new that will protect them and treat them civilly and fairly. I've mentioned to you that John Locke heavily influenced Thomas Jefferson. Well, John Locke also was one of the individuals that said, when government is not treating the people fairly, the people have the right to change or overthrow the government. Listen to that. This is Thomas Jefferson, influenced by John Locke. Okay. So when we have individuals say that, oh, well, these people, they like to riot and they're trying to overthrow the government. But wait a minute. For those that hate people that protest and want to petition the government, and I'm talking about peaceably. I'm not talking about these people that are out burning stores and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm saying is that historically, all right, this country has believed in the right to change the government or overthrow it. All right, when it is not treating the citizens civilly and fairly. That is how we became the United States of America. All right. Because we decided we wanted a new government. That's the new theory of government, according to Thomas Jefferson. He goes on to say, changing governments that have been around for a long time should not just occur without good reasons. All right. So let's go back to my point earlier. Okay. So John Locke influenced Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson says that, hey, if the people have the right to change or overthrow the government and create something new that will protect them and treat them civilly and fairly. All right. Well, he also says that changing governments that have been around for a long time should not just occur without good reasons. All right. He's saying it is the nature of people to deal with an unjust government than to change it. Hallelujah. Isn't that correct? All right. So let's look at the history of the world. How many times has a government come into to fruition or come into creation after a year? They just decide, you know what? This is too much. We just want to get rid of it. Okay. Not very often, if at all. All right. People will deal with an unjust government because they don't know how to change it. They don't have the power to change it. They just don't know what to do. So it's not like, when we talk about the colonists, that they just decided one day, you know what, we want a new government. We don't like Great Britain. They're taxing us too heavily. No, there had been years and years of abuses that had happened. Let me go on. It says, when a government constantly abuses power to the point of one person with absolute power, it is up to the people and even their right to get rid of the government in order to protect future generations. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you exactly what Thomas Jefferson said, because that was in my speak. He says, prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. Hello? I mean, they had been living under the rule of authoritarian government in Great Britain for years. Let me go on. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism. He is really calling out King George III, if you didn't know that. It is their right. It is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. That's the exact same thing I'm saying. I'm just saying it in today's speak. What Thomas Jefferson is saying is he's saying, you know what? We take a lot. We will take a lot when our government constantly abuses its power. So let's look at, African Americans in this country. Slavery abolished in 1865. All right. Given the right to vote. All right. In the 15th Amendment, or at least the African American men were given the right to vote in the 15th Amendment. Then there's the 14th Amendment, where blacks are now considered citizens. They're considered, first of all, they're considered persons, and then they're considered citizens. All right. So now that's right after the Civil War. Now, 100 years later, in 1965, they are still suffering abuses. OK, so in some states, you still can't marry someone of a different race. That didn't happen until 1967. OK, in many of the southern states, blacks and whites were separated. You can eat in the same restaurants. Huh? OK, what else? Blacks couldn't vote in many southern states. All right. Huh? What? Okay. So now just look at that 100-year period where African Americans suffered in this nation, not having the rights that were guaranteed to them by the Bill of Rights and all of the amendments after. They didn't try to overthrow the government. Huh? Nope. Thomas Jefferson said it is the nature of people to deal with an unjust government than to change it. Yes. Hello. So there's an example right there. All right. But he goes on to say that at some point, enough is enough. So in his indictment to of the king, this is what he says. he says, such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. All right. So now he really getting ready to put King George III and the English Parliament on Front Street. Now, if you didn't understand those words of Thomas Jefferson because they were written in the 1700s, let me share with you in today's language what he's saying. He's saying, we have tolerated the abuse of power from the king, that's King George III, long enough, and now it is time to change or leave the control of the king and establish a new government. Before we do this, we need to explain to the world why. Thomas Jefferson says, to prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He wants the world to know, not just Great Britain, not just King George III, not just the English Parliament. He wants everyone, the entire world, to know what King George III was doing to them. And so then he lists all of these grievances. All right. All of these grievances. All right. And I'll just tell you a few of them. All right. For example, he says the king is a tyrant because he refuses to allow new communities to form an elective group of people, denying them their traditional rights of a representative government. He says the British government disbanded colonial government many times in retaliation to protest. Remember, the English Bill of Rights of 1689 gave citizens the right to petition the government. Well, now what happens is the British government disbands colonial government because they're petitioning against them. Aren't these your citizens? The colonists are your citizens, but yet you deny them the very rights that the English people are supposed to have. Thomas Jefferson goes on in this list of grievances to say, the king has made the judges dependent on him for their jobs and their salaries. Well, see, that's why we need to have an independent judiciary, free from an executive branch or a legislative branch, or in this case, from a king. Okay? Why? Because if the king controls your job, if the king controls your salary, the king controls your opinions. The king controls your thoughts. The king controls your orders. Okay? The king controls your decisions. Yes. That's not how a free and independent judiciary should be. All right. But this is what was going on. So judges that don't want to lose their jobs are going to side with the king. The king tells them to do this, then they're going to do it. It doesn't matter if you're innocent. It doesn't matter if it's fair. They are thinking about themselves. All right. Here's another one. The government protected soldiers for crimes committed against the colonists. All right. So you all should know that when we talk about this rift between the 13 original colonies and Great Britain, it was not just verbal. Okay, it wasn't that, the colonists are upset because they're being taxed. It wasn't like, the colonists are upset because, there was a decision that didn't come their way. It wasn't that, the colonists are just upset because we won't let them set up their own governments. No, it wasn't that easy. So what was going on was that the British military, would come to the 13 original colonies and they would rape. Yes, they would sexually assault women, and children, all right? They would kill children, all right, of the colonists. They would burn their property, burn their churches, burn their homes, steal their property, live in their homes while they were in the colonies. All of these abuses were happening. So it wasn't just some fictional, oh, well, they just didn't like to be taxed, or that one that we hear all the time, oh, taxation without representation. It was way beyond those kinds of things, all right? It was downright ugly and nasty. The king hired German mercenaries to kill them. The king's troops had declared war on them, ravaged their coast, burned their towns, destroyed the lives of their people. All right. These were all of the things that were going on. All right. So King George III was also encouraging the Indians to rise up against the colonists. All right. Now, Thomas Jefferson says that also King George III was, encouraging the slaves, all right, to rise up against the colonists as well. Well, as I mentioned slaves, and as I mentioned Thomas Jefferson, and, we all are endowed by our Creator, that we all have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, or property, if it's John Locke. I got to mention that, Thomas Jefferson was quite hypocritical here, yelling and screaming for their freedom, but enslaving people from Africa. Now, that's a topic for another time. We all know that the founding fathers, while they were excellent and intelligent men when it came to setting up government, they were also pretty hypocritical, in seeking their freedom, but denying another segment of individuals theirs. But again, as I mentioned, that's a topic that we can discuss at another time, but, so he just went on to talk about all of the abuses that they were suffering. So many. Here's another. We have asked the king numerous times to come to terms with us. So what he's establishing is that we're not just going to war. We've tried to talk to him. Each time he answers with more restrictions and punishments. They go on to say that, therefore, he is a tyrant for not listening and caring for his people. That's key. His people. These are his people. Many of them. And remember, even Thomas Jefferson says, we have tried to work with Parliament, asking that they repeat British representative law. We have also reminded them that we are British subjects. They have ignored our inherited rights as British subjects. Therefore, this is what he says. We are declaring ourselves independent from a government that does not protect our rights and freedoms. He goes on to say, we will be their enemy in war, but we hope to be friends in peace. All right. And at the very end of his letter, he goes on to say, we declare ourselves independent from Great Britain. We are no longer associated with the king or parliament and no longer recognize their authority over us. We are a new nation and have all the rights as an independent nation. All right. And then he goes on to say, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. So, Daddy, I'm gone. That's the son talking to the daddy. If you heard the beginning of my lecture here, I'm out of here. Look at all of the things you've done to me. All right. You beat me mercilessly. Took all of my belongings. I went to work, Daddy, all the time. You took all my money. All right. You wouldn't provide me with protection. All right. So here I am out on the street, trying to get home from school, from work, and instead of providing me with just the simplest of things to make sure that I'm safe, you denied me that. Thus, those characters out on the street, those gang members, those gangbangers are free to attack me because you won't give me just a modicum of protection. Man, So I got to go. I'm declaring myself an adult now. All right. With all the freedoms that adults have. I no longer recognize your authority over me. Daddy, I'm out of here. All right. So now, as this letter is being written and completed and sent, you've got to imagine that it took a lot of courage, especially for the signers of the Declaration of Independence, because that put a target right on their backs. All right. John Hancock and all of these individuals that signed the Declaration of Independence. OK, Thomas Jefferson, all the rest of them. All right. There's a target on them. Benjamin Franklin. There's a target on them. All right. How dare you? Is what the king is saying, and Parliament. Because I don't want anybody to get this notion that, it's just King George III. Because remember now, the English Bill of Rights of 1689, has now taken away a lot of that authoritarian rule in Great Britain. And put it now in the hands of Parliament. So now, and as you know, as it is in Great Britain today, all right, Parliament, the people through their representation, control the government. The crown, or for example, Queen Elizabeth right now, she's just a figurehead. She has no role, no official role in how government is managed. Okay. She is the figurehead historically and traditionally of Great Britain, but she has no authority over government. Okay. Parliament does. So I want you to understand that King George III certainly had power, but his power, a lot of it came through Parliament. So it wasn't just him. It was Parliament. It was these cousins and brothers and fathers of the colonists right there in Great Britain that were executing all of these laws and treating their own citizens horribly. So now, if you're the signers of the Declaration of Independence and you've declared yourselves a new nation, well, and you can declare yourself a new nation, but that nation that is over you has a say. And so Great Britain is like, who do you think you are? We are the mightiest nation on earth. And at the time, folks, Great Britain was the mightiest nation on the earth, okay, or in the world. All right. They had the baddest military. And when I say bad, I mean good, for those of you that are square. All right. Bad, man. Now, mind you, they had just won a war. And when I say just, I mean not just like within the last year, but prior to that, they had won a war against France. All right. But that war was costly to them. All right. Well, hey, and I'm talking about the now new United States of America, we certainly cannot go up against the mightiest nation of the world. So what I'm saying is that they thought about these things. They thought, okay, there are 13 colonies. These 13 colonies are independent of each other. There's no government. I mean, there's no United States of America yet. So on July 3rd, 1776, there is no United States of America. There's still 13 colonies, 13 independent colonies. It's just like 13 independent countries. Okay. All right. But there are 13 independent colonies that report to Great Britain. Now they're saying we're going to come together. Okay. And we're going to form these now new United States of America. Fine. Okay. But remember, or not remember, because you may not have known this, but there's no military. There is no military. There is no military in the United States of America. They don't have one. They have to come up with something. All right. So, you've got this ragtag group of individuals that come together, under a continental army. OK, or a revolutionary army, or whatever you want to call them. OK, see, these are not. So many of them had maybe served in the British military, but a lot of them had never served in the military ever. Remember, there is no need for a military in the 13 original colonies because who's protecting them? Great Britain. So there's no formal military. They have to come up with something. All right. And so now you have militias that are formed, and you have these farmers that put down an axe, and pick up a rifle now. All right. They had very little training. But what they did have was a letter. And they did have one nation in the world that wanted to settle a score. All right. And that nation was France. France heard the call of these new United States of America and said, you know what? This is a great opportunity for us to get back at Great Britain. What we'll do is we will help them establish their new nation. And they did. And France came to the side of the now new United States of America and gave Great Britain a run for its money. Let's look at today. All right. See, Russia thought, we can go in and invade the Ukraine in no time. All right. Hasn't it been like a month now, if not more? Right. OK, well, the Russians, at least the Russian government, believes that, its military is quite mighty. But the Ukrainians, boy, them folks fight because they don't want that authoritarian rule over their people ever again. Because they remembered how it was under the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, the USSR, prior to the fall of the Soviet Union, when Russia just simply became its own nation. All right, after the Cold War. So the Ukrainians are fighting. I mean, it's not just the Ukrainian military. It's people that one day were shining shoes that picked up a gun, or one day parking cars, picked up a gun, working in the Ukrainian McDonald's, pick up a gun to fight off this tyrant in Vladimir Putin and Russia. All right. But they've got help. All right. Because the world remembers what happens when it does not come to the aid of other nations. We have a world war. All right. And so I'm talking about the world, is trying to prevent such. So they're giving arms to Ukraine. They're taking Ukrainians people in, okay, to help them until all this mess is finally sorted out. And the United States of America today, all right, remembering how it was formed, okay, and how it remains as a nation today, is supporting the Ukraine against Russia, against tyrants, against this authoritarian figure that does not care for its people, but cares for its group of individuals that support them in their lavish lifestyles. All right. So we've talked about the Declaration of Independence. We now know that John Locke, an English philosopher, was one who greatly influenced Thomas Jefferson and his thoughts on life and liberty and either pursuit of happiness or property, and how nations, all right, new nations should be formed, okay? And that there ought to be a social contract, all right, between individuals or man and government. Remember this, governments come from the people. Governments are not over the people. That's why Thomas Jefferson says, if government is not treating its people properly, then it needs to be changed or overthrown. All right. We cannot have a nation where its people, the majority of its people, are being treated horribly. So if we look at the history of the United States, that's why we've had to have fundamental change, fundamental social change throughout this country's 230 some odd year history. All right. See, we can't be a nation and talk about, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their creator when you enslaving people. See, we can't talk about all men are created equal and yet we're killing off Native Americans and putting them on reservations. Okay. See, we can't talk about we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. All right. But yet deny people that want to come to this country basic human rights. You can't. All right. You can't deny in this country. All right. Individuals in your own laws. All right. The right to vote, the right to go to any restaurant they want to, the right to go to school with any people. Okay, you can't deny that and yet call yourselves the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. One nation? Really? One nation? Really? One nation, but yet certain people can't sit in certain parts of a movie theater, but others can. Or how about women? Okay, so men can vote. Even black men. Think about this for a minute. Former black slaves had the right to vote before white women could in this country. One nation, under God, indivisible. That means not divided. So men could vote, women could not vote. Men could own property, women could not own property. All right. Black people were property under the subjugation of white people. All right. The Declaration of Independence. July 4th, 1776. A new theory of government, a social contract between man and government. All right. And it indicts King George III and lists grievances, all of the grievances that they had against him. And then finally declares itself free and independent from Great Britain. As you guys know, there was some hard feelings after the war. Great Britain, of course, lost because we are now the United States of America and have been such. All right. There were a few little skirmishes throughout, those early years. All right. But Great Britain has become a great, great friend to the United States of America. If you just think about it in terms of world history, okay, France. And that's why the United States still has this great relationship with France today, because what if France had not come to their aid? The United States of America would not be in existence because Great Britain had a mighty military that could easily clamp down on this nation saying, oh, we're declaring ourselves free. So the United States and Great Britain, father and son, eventually make up and become powerful allies of each other. All right. Thanks to, let's call France an uncle. All right. That had to help his nephew get his father or France's brother straightened out. All right, this is Jaden Miller, and I want you to think about that. That's the Declaration of Independence from my perspective. Please like, share, and subscribe on my YouTube channel, and like, comment, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. Listen, I want to recommend to you guys one more time, check out the Man Space Podcast. Their website is themanspacepodcast.com. All right, that's Russ and Les. Check those guys out. They have really, really great things to say. And go back and listen to the episode that I was on, I think right now, a couple of weeks ago. All right. Listen, you can find me on my website, www.jadenmiller.com. I'm on Instagram, Mr. Jaden Miller. Check me out. Again, thank you guys for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to Think About It with Jaden Miller. Don't forget to like and subscribe to his YouTube channel, and like and follow on your favorite podcast platform.